What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Black and Gold. This is HiBruiNation, the unofficial home of your Boston Bruins.
Morning. How's everybody doing? You guys need your fazenda. Holy shit! I mean, I'm the guest. You guys are sitting there. Like,
Here.
Okay, take two.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good stuff, guys. Broadcast
You want to restart
101.
Yeah.
Restart. That's going in the bloopers for sure. That's going on the TikTok.
I'm no broadcast expert, but I can tell you that wasn't an open. Although it's very good. We can keep going and people would be laughing. So let's go. All good.
we could just go on. We'll just go on with it.
The intro, the sound effects and intro and everything, that's been a whole thing all year. We haven't been able to nail that down.
Well, that was kind of mosh pit, heavy metal. You get into that, and then all of a sudden it's like, Masterpiece Theater. I don't know. I mean, you might want to pick a line. All right, guys, what's going on? Hi, I'm Billy Jaffe. I'm the guest today on HiBruiNation as I sit here with Cam, Kyle.
Yeah, welcome back, HiBruiNation alumni, Billy Jaffe.
I think it's twice now.
Thanks again for joining us today.
I think it's twice now that we've had him, so I think that can constitute him as an alumni. We'll do that.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's
happy to
that
be
was
here.
Awesome. That reaction was the best. Coming into it, yeah. So everybody, welcome in Billy Jaffe. We got the Higgs wagon and our vibe captain Maddie V. And, I'm just Cam. I don't know. There's no really good response after that cold open. What we're doing. Today we just got a good trade.
And there's frigid. Yes, go ahead.
That was frozen. I don't even know what else to do from that. If anything,
We've all been there. All right.
That was awesome.
A lot to get into today.
Yeah. We got the trade deadline. That's probably going to be the big crux of this episode. Big emotional 2 days, at least for me. I mean, over the last few years, I got to watch, two of the biggest reasons why I found hockey again leave the Boston Bruins, and I've shed a couple of tears. But without further ado, guys, let's get into it. How did kind of like everyone feel about Friday? Kind of like an insane day from 1 p.m. to till 5, I would say.
Not even. Well, at least from my perspective. As I called it on both NESN and then on Morning Brew with me and with Razor and myself, seismic movement. We had a earthquake here in the Massachusetts area about 4 to 6 weeks ago now. 8 weeks, maybe. I don't remember. It was actually one that registered, and that was nothing compared to what Bruins Nation went through. It felt like, and I think, Cam, it was actually, and I'm not nitpicking here, I'm saying I think it was actually like 1:30 or whatever when the first trade was made. I think, again, I could be wrong, so don't trust my bad memory, but it was a matter of not even 1:30 or 1 to 3, like. You knew that Brad had been traded by 3 o'clock. You just had no idea if it was official, approved, and what was the return. That was the biggest thing for a while. But you knew that Carlo and Coyle were traded, for sure by then. And then the whole last 12 minutes, came. And so, seismic shift for this organization. There was 2 paths that we were presented with via management, via Cam, about 6 weeks ago at the Bruins Foundation event and gala, and it was kind of help maybe this direction, help the team out a little bit depending how they play, or retool depending on how they play. And they took a third path, and they can, they might say that it was, they still think it's a bit of a retool. It's a much bigger retool. This is using the construction terms. There's tear downs, and then there's major remodels, right? This was, and then there's, bathroom remodel, right? I mean, this is a major remodel, because like one of those long-term remodels, you didn't tear it down to the studs. You still have 5 guys that you're committed to, et cetera. But otherwise, this is a major remodel for this team. And that's what ended up happening, but it was intense. It was wild, and doing it live was great on NESN. When I mean great, that's what you want as a broadcast. You want stuff. You want to talk about stuff. You want to have stuff going on, and we had stuff.
Yeah, definitely enough substance for you guys to cover. I guess my first thing would be like, when do you think the team made the decision that this is what needed to happen? So I know that they had been
Which
very
one?
selective.
All of them or just Brad?
Well, I guess the shift from going from a small retool on the fly to something much more substantial than that, because they kept the wordage pretty close, where it was always a retool, it was never a rebuild, and I think this is as close to quote unquote rebuilding as you can get, while also still having somebody like McAvoy, somebody like Pasta, and somebody like Swayman locked up long term. They're in a tight spot where it's
right.
You're not ripping it to the studs because you have very important players in their prime at key positions locked up.
Yep. And now how do they react? That's something too. And that's another question at another time. You asked, when do I think they decided? I think they decided a couple of days leading up. I think they said at the very least, Kyle, we got to look at things. We've got to investigate. We got to listen to everything. We've got to say we have to identify who are the players that we are not moving. All right. And then they did that. Once they did that, and they came to the decision that there were a couple of players that have been longtime Bruins that were still available with term, the Coyles, the Carlos being obvious ones right now. I'm sure there were a few others. They said, okay, now we put it out there that we're open for business. So I don't have a date for you or a day, but I got to imagine it wasn't, Friday at 6 a.m. It was probably somewhere maybe after.
Leading up.
Yeah, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. They were meeting every day. They were talking about things. And then they start, you start chumming the waters. You make it known it's clear, and you start receiving calls, and you start saying, all right. And, they look at Charlie Coyle, and, you already have, and I know he wasn't playing a lot of center recently. He's playing predominantly right wing. But you say, all right, we already have another guy signed for even longer than him in Elias Lindholm, right shot center, similar role. It's repetitive. You know what I mean? You don't need, I think, both on there. And Charlie Coyle becomes more attractive trade because of his contract situation, what he's being paid and for how much longer term. And then you look at Carlo and you say, what kind of value does he get back? And defenseman, right shot, 6'5" defenseman who have played hundreds of games in this league, hundreds and hundreds, and have had a significant playoff experience, carry significant return value. And he got that.
I'll say with Carlo and Coyle, we got absolute hauls for those two players. I think we got Zellers and Casey Middlestat for Coyle, and then we got a first round pick,
Minter, yeah,
and Minton for Carlo.
Yep.
And then in 2026 too, that's the first round pick that we got from Toronto, and that's supposedly going to be a deeper draft class than this year. So I mean that's awesome.
Yeah, on paper, look, Cam, on paper, it's great, right? I mean, you look at it and you say, all right, now, I mean, if we really want to dive in, let's see what Casey Middlestat does. He's got to take advantage of this opportunity now. Because you're talking now 3 teams, right? Buffalo, Colorado, Boston, okay? He's going to have to reestablish himself. He had an unbelievable start to the season, putting up points big time for Colorado. Slowed down second half, found himself riding the elevator up and down the lineup. Okay. 34 points. Look, Charlie Coyle was not having a good offensive year. Duh, right? We know that. I mean, after another big year last year. Now, previous 2 years, Middlestat had, I believe it was 57 or more points in each of the 2 years. One was with Buffalo, and last year was a combined year, Colorado and Buffalo. All good. But if he's going to be one of your top 2 centers, he's going to have to elevate his game, and that's okay. That's a challenge. But this is the opportunity for this kid now. I think he's 28 years old. He's in that.
Younger.
I don't know if somebody smarter than me can look up. I think it's 27 or 28 because he's been in the league. At least he went to college for a year. I think 26.
Yeah,
he's younger.
Later this year, turning 27. But yeah.
Okay, so
not far off.
Okay, so he's got to. He's in that perfect prime of athletic prime and mental prime, and he's got to show like this is it. This is that great spot for him, and I'd love to see him shine for the Bruins because they don't have as much skill up front that they would like. We know that he could provide that. He's going to have to, really engage in battles. I mean, you want to be a top 2 center, you got to be a guy that's going to hunt pucks, and you're going to face in matchups that aren't always comfortable. So that would be great. Let's hope that happens. And maybe you slot now. Maybe you slot Lindholm, if you're going to keep Zacha as one of your other centers, and that's another discussion for another time, maybe Lindholm goes to number 3 now, and that's a better spot for him. So let's see how Casey does, because he's got great hands, excellent vision. He can make a lot of things happen, but this is a big chance for, you're not going to get 80 points out of him, I don't think. But if you can get 50 to 60, okay, then that's what you're going to get. But it's got to be also competing at the other end defensively too. So let's see that. But I agree. Listen, I think the Toronto return, Cam, is the biggest one for me. The first round pick, as you mentioned, in 26. I'm no draft expert, but yes, I've heard the same thing. 26 is better than 25. And then, Frazier, let's see. Prospects are always at their highest when they're prospects, right? Because
Bruins know that well.
Well, all teams do. I know we're so focused on Boston, we get caught up. And trust me, I've been with other organizations. It's the same thing too. You can fall in lust. The biggest thing is I've learned from managers, good managers out there, is you can't fall in lust with your own prospects. That you've got to be realistic, and you've got to understand. And some are going to hit, and some aren't. Frazier, I talked to 2 people in Toronto. They say very good potential. Okay, I'm in for that. Good size, great compete. If I get a middle 6 guy that's a legit NHLer, I'm freaking happy. I'm very happy, and they get that first round pick too. I thought that, I thought Bruins management, long way of getting to it, I thought for the most part did a real good job on those first couple trades. And go back to the Brazeau trade. That was a very good,
awesome
for giving that. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I thought the whole day in general, people were giving it like a B minus on the day. I think the biggest thing people were upset about was the return for Marchand, but I mean, obviously behind closed doors, there's something. I think there was something. There's a reason why that's all you got back for him.
I agree.
But overall, I thought that the day was pretty good, and I thought that Sweeney did a good job with that deadline.
I would agree, and most people, if you believe social media being most people, and I don't know if it is or isn't, but I'm going to assume it is. They wanted this. They didn't want to come back with we didn't do much. Most people feel like they wanted it, and they did it. And not that they're influenced by social media or the mass of people, but I think they recognize, given how underwhelmingly they have played since coming out of the break with just one, well, now 2 wins. Go figure. Of course they win.
Yeah, right. There's nothing more on brand than that yesterday.
Yeah, they're not even tanking appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, well, that.
Not that I want them to.
Yeah, I know.
I
know what you mean. I know. But they go out and they didn't play well coming out of the break. This is 2 breaks now that they haven't played well coming out of. By the way, the one after Christmas was really the one that reset the tone for this team. I think if you look at hindsight being 2020. Anyway, they needed to do this. They needed, I thought we'd have one. I thought one of Carlo, Coyle, maybe somebody else, one of those bigger name guys would be traded on trade deadline day. And then I thought we'd see another one before the NHL entry draft, the end of June. I thought we would. I did. I thought we would see that, because to see all those happen on the one day was one of the biggest wows of it.
I'm kind of with you on that. I thought on trade deadline day, I thought Carlo was safe to a degree, because we don't have much in the way of right-handed, right shot defensemen, in our pipeline. So I had figured Coyle is probably one of the most attractive targets. I thought Geeky might have, even with the career season he's having, might have gone, but he's an RFA. So I figured like maybe Sweeney's prioritizing keeping the RFAs, seeing what we can do, but he was not prepared to lose any unrestricted free agent for nothing, which I thought which added to it. I thought this trade deadline was also a catch-22 for Bruins fans. You're having this, uncharacteristic season with your power play, your penalty kill not being, at least in the middle of the pack. And you have a lot of people saying, well, tear it down or retool it, rebuild it, do something with it. But then, when management gives you what you want, then people will just be like, but you could have gotten more. I felt like it was a cat.
I know. It's always easy to say you can get more until you're there and doing it and all that stuff. But I mean, it is a catch-22 for Bruins people, because you're emotionally invested in this team, and, and you see, people that you've, gotten invested with, players, obviously the biggest one being Brad, and now they're identity players. That legacy
Carlo trade broke Kyle. I saw his reaction when it happened. He's been a big Carlo guy for a long time. I didn't know what he was going to do with himself after.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a wonderful guy. He is such an awesome kid. But this is probably, am I say going to be good for him? I think this was probably around the right time for him to get traded. I mean, he like a lot of the team wasn't having a great season this year. So I'm not putting anything on him, but I think, what he does is so simple when he's on. It's subtle almost, right? It's a containment style guy who can do the little thing and does make a difference when he's on. We saw 2 years ago, we saw last year for most of it, how important he can be. And that doesn't mean you're not allowed to have a bad down year. I mean, every business, every player, everybody's gonna have a down year every once in a while. But sometimes, change is good for both for the player and for the team. So I get it. I mean, you're invested with this guy, but his contract was so reasonably priced that you end up getting something better. If Don had made one deal or two deals, right? Brazo and one other deal, I think a lot of people would be like, this is nowhere near enough. I mean, this is nowhere near enough for this team. But again, I thought maybe one would go for sure, and then there'd be another big one before the trade deadline, the NHL entry draft. So you never know what's going to happen. The Bruins became the talk of the NHL because of their willingness to listen to some pretty veteran players.
I remember talking with my friend, and he just texts me. He just goes, "Who the hell is left?" He goes he sees Carlo, Marchand, Coyle, and he goes, those are like names. He thought that those names would be here. He thought that people with term and at least Marchand.
Nah, but term is attractive. It's controlled now, and you understand. Okay, I'm gonna, Charlie Coyle makes 5+, but I know what I'm getting. He's got another year. I can figure him into my salary cap. I'm a team like Colorado. I don't need draft picks because draft picks aren't going to win me a Stanley Cup. And if I win a cup, if all these teams figure if we win a cup this year, next year, then we're fine giving up that first round pick. And they are. I agree with it. But your friend, this is where you can't, again, you've got to, it's hard not to get emotional, but you can't be so, you can't be blinded by your own, because there are other people out there that can also play. You know what I mean? That you can bring in and you can help and maybe make your team better.
I think a big part of that being emotional part and that nostalgia is, at least for Carlo and Marchand, is now you have to see a Maple Leafs jersey or a Panthers jersey, and how the Bruins fans have felt about the Panthers for the past couple of years. They've been our kryptonite, but I think that was another big reason why people were so
huge reason.
Yeah, why they were so shocked.
Mega reason.
Yeah,
absolutely, and I get it. I do. I mean, I absolutely get it. I mean, they did what they could do for Brad in the end. It was a last minute deal. I don't know if it wasn't done 2 hours before. It was minutes before, 15 minutes, 20, whatever. When they finally got to it.
Deal,
yeah. It was a, there had been discussions, obviously, but I think they really got this done very late. So he wanted to go down there. I'm sure it wasn't their first choice as well. Put it that way. But they figured it out. And, I said this on Morning Brew with Razor. I said, is the day of not trading to your arch rival kind of over, because there's so many teams. There's a salary cap. In the old days, you wouldn't have traded with Montreal. You probably, but
I think that's still on, to be honest with you. I don't think Montreal trades with Boston or Toronto unless it's a minor deal.
Okay, well, okay, fine. But you know what? Montreal and Boston right now, I mean, Boston, would Boston really?
I said there's no rivalry there, really.
Well, there is a rivalry. There's right, but I get it. But the you've got Florida in Tampa, Tampa, and Toronto have become your biggest in the now rivals, and they made true trades. One with those two teams.
Do you think part of that has to do with where the team sees that, like where Bruins ownership sees the team, like say, you probably wouldn't want to trade Marchand to your rival if you thought that you were going to be right back up against him next year. So do you think they're looking at it and saying, hey, maybe we got another year, 2 years before we're really gearing back up to be in that spot? By that point, we probably won't be hurt by it as much.
I think that's a good point.
Maybe. I mean, I'll tell you this. Maybe I shouldn't. I would have been shocked if Marchand got traded to Toronto. Like I was already shocked they were traded to Florida, but I wonder if Toronto. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know. Toronto would have gotten me even a little more, even though Florida got me pretty big too. Yeah. It did.
I gotta be honest with you. I think Toronto was just the only team. Florida was second. Don't get me wrong. I honestly thought Winnipeg. That if they were going to give Marchand to anybody, it would have been Winnipeg.
Cam,
with where they
think
are.
He's going there.
I guess not.
Nobody wants to go.
Cam,
come on, Cam.
Hey, Cam, you might want to after that open. You might want to consider that for the second. No, like, wait, have you ever been? Have you ever been? And I'm being.
I haven't. Oh, I'm getting bullied.
I'm just having fun here. I'm just kidding. I've actually been to Winnipeg.
At least he said it, so we don't have to.
I love my buddy is general manager up there. He's done an amazing job, all kidding aside. But a player has a no trade list. I'm going to assume. Right. Now, unless Brad looked at it, and we're playing total hypothetical here, and said, well, I really believe that Winnipeg could have a legit chance to go. I mean, that is not his family. They're in the East. That's not convenient. Not many nonstops, if any, from here to Winnipeg. My point is, I don't see that happening. And Winnipeg, by the way, just using them as an example, I think the jury's still out on them as to, how good they are come playoff time. But all kidding aside, Winnipeg is Sunrise in Fort Lauderdale, very, very different than going to Winnipeg.
No, I've heard it's not exactly the most shining, spot to be. It's just in terms of, because when you want to trade a guy like Brad, you ideally you want to trade him to a team, that has a realistic and high probability of going for another cup at his age, what he's done for the team. And so I said, like, and Hellebuck is having one hell of a year, but I'm bummed. But so I figured like maybe Winnipeg there because they have assets to give you, and that would have been it. Now, would have Brad agreed to that? Probably not.
No.
But I wonder if they kicked the tires, just to see. Toronto would have
probably not.
Toronto would have ruined me sending him to Toronto. It's still weird looking at Carlo in a Maple Leafs jersey. I don't know.
I get it. No, I get it. I just wonder if the days of, because it's such a big business now, and your best return is coming from those teams. You just have to say, okay, we're not where we need to be. This gives us our best chance to get back there quicker, sooner than later. I can handle it, meaning the organization can handle it.
I guess it depends how deep the rivalry goes, though.
That could be true. Depends. I mean, it's very situational.
Because the Bruins have been the dominant factor, the dominant force in the rivalry the last few years with Toronto, right?
Could be.
They've absolutely, they've. Now you could say, well, what about Florida? Florida's been the last 2 years, so maybe it doesn't feel as bad. Again, I think the whole Marchand thing is so different than these others. I just do the scenario
for sure.
So the whole Toronto thing, maybe because the Bruins have been the dominant force, the dominant team in that recent rivalry, maybe that made it easier for them. And the return is good. The return is very good.
I think it's just funny if you look at it. Toronto was, okay, we can't beat them, so we're going to take their players. Like, you know what I mean? Because we've owned them in the playoffs for, like, I think every last meeting, and it's been decided, I think, in 7 games. And then if you look at the Florida situation, it's the opposite. Marchand's just like, well, if I can't beat them, join them. Like, you know what I mean? It's a little amusing in that regard, but I don't think that was necessarily the case.
I think there's a huge comfort factor for him going to Florida. And I know you guys have heard all of it, but the veterans that are there, and Sean Thornton, Gregory Campbell, he's familiar with other people in management down there too. Okay. Yep. Very familiar. And then you have now the ultra familiarity from the recent Four Nations with Reinhart and Bennett. And it's a 2 hour and 48-minute flight from Boston down to Florida. There's oodles of nonstops, if you know what I mean. And it's same time zone, and he's got 3 kids and everything. And yes, they've got a great opportunity to go far again. It all makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I agree. How did you feel about the the Vegas rumors with respect to Marchand. I mean, I saw that. Like, again, I'm agreeing with you that I don't think he was going to go out west because of his family, and you brought up all those good points. But because he also had familiarity with Cassidy and some of those players on there as well.
Yeah.
So I thought,
when I think about it, I thought my initial thought when I saw that in Colorado earlier in the week was, well, it makes sense if you're going to go west. See, to me, those two teams made a lot more sense than like LA. LA, I think, is good.
Or Winnipeg.
Or Winnipeg, yes. I mean, LA is, Winnipeg. Winnipeg and LA are very similar. Again, I'm not. I have to emphasize this because I understand how Winnipeg is it's different, but it's small and it's all. But by the way, the players that go there, some of them end up loving it. They do. They're a lot of American players there. Hellebuck, Connor up there, Velarde. Anyways,
we're gonna need to issue an apology letter to all the citizens of Winnipeg.
I know. I follow. I mean, anyways, it made more sense to me than LA because LA is good. I don't see them as a legit cup winner. Yeah, so if I'm him, so anyways, and I think the East Coast was a major influence in that.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Do you think that the injury situation ended up being a stumbling point for some of these? Because with the stipulations that were thrown into that second round conditional and things like that, it seems like maybe there's a little more than maybe was let on. So really it was sort of just a make good by the player, knowing that there is maybe the chance that he can't even hit the conditions that were set for that.
Well, the team, obviously Billy Zito, GM of Florida, worked those in because he felt there has to be that concern. Has to be. That's why he probably battled so hard for those conditions. So he's still got a couple of weeks to go. When you hear week to week, you're like, I always think week to week is minimum 3 weeks.
Yeah. From what I heard, he's only going to be ready to play again just before the playoffs. That's what I read yesterday.
Okay. Well, but that's why the conditions were put in there. So week to week to me is always minimum. It's a me thing. Week to week means he's out at least a week, most likely 2. Then you've got a week of ramping up. So a minimum of 3 weeks. So if he's still week to week, it's minimum of 3 going on 4 weeks. That's right before the playoffs now.
Yeah.
How does he respond to recovery and reemerge? Feeling good. Like we saw this with Hampus Lindholm. He was out there for a while. He was skating and everything, and then something happened as part of his recovery. So, I hope Brad is fine. I hope holy smokes, I wish he was good for Tuesday night. You want to talk about a right?
Oh, that'd be a
mega show.
That would be fantastic.
I mean, but he's not. So yes, to answer your question, get back to it, Higgs. Yes, that's exact. It had to play into it. Otherwise, Florida wouldn't have required those stipulations, those conditions.
Just to touch on Lindholm real quickly, I don't know if you saw this, but I mean, congratulations to him and his now fiance. By the way, that was a proposal I think a long while ago, but they posted it on Instagram, and someone commented, and it just goes, "Get off that darn knee. We need you on the ice."
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was a little funny, but no, congratulations to Hampus and his now fiance. So that's amazing. But just a little quip I thought I'd throw in there.
Pivoting going forward too. I mean, obviously the biggest, we've talked about it for how long, but the Marchand was here for 14, 15 years. He was the captain. I know they said the team wasn't going to name a captain for the rest of the year this year. I'm just curious to see, who gets the C next year. I know people have talked about McAvoy after Bergeron retired, and maybe now we're looking at Pastrnak. I'm curious to see who your thoughts is at the next captain. And not only that, you got rid of Coyle, Carlo, all these guys that, interchangeably wore the A. So who do you think is the next captain, and what do you think is going to develop into the next leadership group of this team?
Well, I think the leadership group, based on who we know are here, it's McAvoy and Pastrnak, McAvoy, those two. All right. And then you look at, I don't know how vocal some of these guys are because I'm not in the room with them, but, I'm going to throw out a couple of names, Hampus Lindholm. All right. He's been here now some years. is Mark Kastelik now that he's signed to 3 years. I mean, it's a simple way. I'm just saying, it's not about wearing a letter. It's becoming part of the group. And the Bruins have always had that 5 or 6 person leadership group. Even when Zdeno was leading the way, there was always a meeting. When you saw a meeting on the ice, it was Chara, Bergeron, Krug, Krejci. It was 5 guys. There was always a 5th guy, Kevin Miller. They were always in there. So who's going to be that group that gets going? And I can't even answer that question, because I got to imagine the Bruins will have 5 new players coming in the offseason to help fortify, solidify this group. Somebody out of that group will have to have, at least in theory, I think, some leadership qualities. The obvious answers right now, McAvoy and Pastrnak. McAvoy being out, I'm sure this is so hard on him not being around. He wants to be with the group. I guarantee you, heck, if he could, maybe I think somebody would report it, but I guarantee if he could, he would have flown down to Tampa just to be with the team. And be a major part of it. I'm sure there was discussion on a team chat, let's say a team, there was where the leaders step up, and I'm sure McAvoy and Pastrnak took the leads there, right? It has to be. That's what they are. David took the lead with the media talking about it, down there. So it's, I mean, could they come into next season with 3 A's and not name a captain and just let guys grow? Doesn't bother me if you say to them, look, we're here right now. We don't want one of you to take all the responsibilities of being the captain, because those day-to-day responsibilities are greater than many people realize. You are dealing with minutia as the captain. You're dealing with players, talking to players, going on visits. Like, okay, can you do this day? You're working with the team services director, not even just working with the coaches on ice stuff. You're working on off ice stuff. You're working on personalities. You're working on somebody who's having a bad week, maybe at home, and you got to go help take care of that person. You know what I mean? Like mentally, so much that goes into it. Maybe they form a leadership group with 3 A's, or have 4 of them and rotate one of the A's home and road. So long answer of saying those 2 guys lead the charge, but there's so much more that has to go into it.
Bringing up McAvoy, and how you said he wished he would be with the team. If he could fly down to Tampa yesterday, he would have, or to be with them.
I would have to think, I'm talking, in theory,
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. I'm assuming you've seen the 4 Nations, and when you watched it, when he delivered the lineup, I mean, you could just see how emotional he was, and he seemed like he was choking up, giving up the names, and how much he wanted to play.
Yep.
And I feel like that goes a lot for a lot of these guys too. You see a struggling team, and those are your friends, your colleagues, and you just want to be out there to motivate them, and that to me speaks leadership.
Yeah, he absolutely wanted to be out there with them. I mean, and especially given how confidently he played the first couple of games.
Oh yeah, I mean it was just an awesome tournament, and it was great. That's more than backtracking, but I don't know who would be the captain next year. I'm actually in agreement with you. With it's definitely at least Pastrnak and McAvoy. And I agree that there's definitely other guys in the locker room that will step up as that. Kastelik, I think, is going to be one of them. I think he's already.
He's a quiet guy. He's a quiet guy, but he speaks loudly on the ice. Yeah, he does. But there's all different forms of leadership. There's verbal, there's nonverbal, there's et cetera. I was just thinking on the spot here about players, and I am going through my head saying, well, who else could be gone after this year too? So are they part of it or not? But I digress.
Because I think looking at the roster from the other day, it's I think even now, still with the additions, 6 of your forwards that were in the lineup are some semblance of a UFA, RFA. So it's there still could be plenty more turnover. And that's also not even talking about it's you still technically have an interim head coach. I think that a lot could change for the team before next year. And then I think that's going to come down to, we were talking about the retool or the rebuild. Do they go out and actually try to aggressively add and fill these holes, or is it something where they're going to sort of do a soft build?
Yeah, no, it feels like they're going to try to be, I think they will have an eye on being aggressive. I feel like that they will use the Washington model and say, we went from this, to that. And Washington added 7 players, a pretty significant amount of players. Bruins are going to have a lot of cap space. They're going to have a lot of decisions, but they got a lot of cap space. Now, you can make mistakes with cap space. We know that.
Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to figure out where do they go. Now, they also now finally have some draft capital. They have extra. Could they use that to make a trade? To get a player. There's going to be a handful of teams that don't go far in the playoffs that thought they were going to say, "Oh, smokes, we got to make some deals. This isn't working, or we need to get out of this contract. This is a great player, but we have to make some deals. We got to get under." Cam, I'll just use Winnipeg as an example here. If Winnipeg doesn't go far, if they don't go far, they're going to have to make some moves.
Yeah,
because it's been a couple of years now. So, and they might face like Colorado in the first round. So one of those two teams is going to get knocked out. I don't have it in front of me exactly who they could play, but if they don't go far because of their finances, their attendance issue, they're going to have to make some moves. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden the Bruins say, hey, we got 2 first-round picks next year. That good draft year. We can use some of that draft capital. And could we get a player from that lineup who's under contract? I mean, why not? So to be aggressive, there's trades, there's signings, there's RFA, restricted free agent offer sheets. Now that they've got draft capital, Higgs, they could look into that and say maybe we make an RFA offer to somebody, an offer sheet. A lot of opportunity.
A lot of the offer sheet slots end up being that second, third round capital, unless you're like at the top of it too, right? And they stocked up mostly on second, third round picks. So yeah. But I think it's like typically slim that you see it first. So it's usually like it'd have to be a pretty.
I think it has to be like 8. It has to be 8 million plus in order to.
Right. But at least they have now. Next year they've got it, and they have a first round pick this year. I think they've got a draft pick in every round this year except one, if I remember. And I think it's either next year or the year after, where right now they've got their flush of picks every round. We haven't seen that in years for this team.
No, which is good to see, because if you look at how dried up the farm system was too, I mean, it's great. So hopefully they do a mix of both, right? Like maybe they use an advantageous trade to get somebody, but then you also build it up a bit. I think there could be a wonderful mix. It's not a big free agency year from what I looked at. Mm-hmm. I think it was I can't remember who wrote on 32 Thoughts, but they said that don't expect the bigger names to kind of make it. But I'm actually thinking Besser makes free agency, and I think Nikolai Ehlers also makes free agency. I don't think
there's that Winnipeg again. You love Winnipeg, Cam. I would say
I like Ehlers. Just give me a left
Winnipeg
wing.
Heavy episode today.
It is.
Fine. Give me Jonathan Drouin. I gave you Colorado.
I like Nikolai Ehlers as well. I do. I think that that you want to talk about speed. Opportunity could be really good for a player like him. But there's a player that's a prime example. Yeah, you could, but I'm with you. I don't think the UFA class is huge. I think around draft time, you can still make a trade and get somebody really good back. I just do. And you can sign a couple of those middle guys that really hopefully help make your team, very complete. So ton of work to be done, though. Still tons of work to be done for Don and his staff.
Connor Garland for his second round pick. Call Don. Give him my number. We'll make it happen.
Okay.
I do think that
bring Connor home.
The fact that Sweeney was kind of allowed to make the moves that he did kind of says what ownership is thinking about his future too, and the fact they kind of let him run wild to go do whatever he wanted, thinking about the future, because it wouldn't be make all these moves and then we're going to try to find someone to replace him. So I think that they're thinking for him long term, and he's kind of playing. I don't want to say playing for his job, but I think that says a lot about what
everybody's playing for their job, and coaches talk about it. I think Don talked about it earlier in the year too, about everybody being like, absolutely. It's part of the business. If you're going to be in this business, it's, and I guess, I think I've said this on your show when you had me one other time. I mean, sports is this business that is looked upon differently because it's emotional, right? It's so emotional for everybody involved. But it's no different than a major, like Fortune 500 company. You're always kind of, you're working for your job, so to speak. You're having to prove it most of the time. Every company handles things differently, but this is a business that if your boss has got to determine what success is. And right now, the ownership management is behind, these guys. They allowed them to do their thing here. Now let's see where it goes. But they've got a ton more work to do, and let's see how much more work they let them do.
It's exciting as much of a down year this has been. But for Bruins fans, you kind of have to look at this retool and kind of get excited. You're now what, Vogel? You said that it's the second youngest team in the league. You have draft.
You have draft. This morning, it was the second youngest.
Yeah, you have draft capital. Billy, you mentioned we have money, and so it may not be a big free agency year, but it's still you can make something work.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I didn't realize they were the second youngest. Like, who's the youngest? Do you have that in front of you or no?
I do.
Is it
Montreal? Montreal
Okay.
was the second youngest going into the season. That I know.
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Okay, but all right, so think of that now. Montreal and Buffalo. So they're the youngest, and that and you think that's exciting. And I'm not saying you personally, Cam. I'm saying Buffalo. I mean, oh my God, like it's you want to talk about bad, and culture and lack of it, and you're like, okay, so that's not exciting anymore there, right? So young is good. Like, people think that Chicago's the youngest team in the league. They do, but they also have a lot of old guys they brought in to help guide the young guys, and that hasn't also worked out. So young is good, but it's who are your young players? Can they play in the NHL? That's the biggest thing.
Yep.
That if youth is only good if youth is going to become vets, right? And good vets.
Very true.
That's where you have to be. So that's where the Bruins, I think, have to be. That's why they're going to have to accentuate what they have right now with good middle vet players, if possible. I'm so curious to see what they end up being able to do. They've been working. I guarantee you they were exhausted after Thursday and Friday, the management, right? Like, literally no sleep, working. That's their job though, right? Get a little bit of rest. And now they're already starting to say, what is our plan to target certain players for the off season? From young, middle-aged, old guys, they've got their plan already. They are putting it down, and they're starting to, now they start scouting with probably a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, I liked what you said Friday too. Like now it's, or maybe it was Dale or Razor. I can't remember.
If it was something smart, it probably wasn't me.
Oh.
Probably one of those guys.
I think one of you guys had mentioned, like, now the scouts can actually start fighting for who their prospect is, right? Like, they can start making those cases. I think it was you that mentioned that, or I think
that was
Razor.
Probably Razor.
Okay.
He's a big fighter. He likes using the no, I'm kidding. That was probably Razor. But we were talking about how different now this next few years becomes. When I was the one that mentioned draft capital and how different this is for this team, and then he brought up that point.
Cool. Yeah. Guys, do you guys have any other questions for Billy regarding the trade deadline?
I just wanted to throw in one thing about Sweeney as a whole. It's like, I know that recently you've been hearing fans chanting fire Sweeney and all this. Obviously the product on the ice this year has been pretty tough, but looking at the whole body of work minus the conservative drafting, I'm not sure there's too many other guys that you'd say you wish you had in here. Do you think that now, knowing where the team is at and getting the refresh draft capital, that maybe they get a little less conservative? Like, do you think that the reason they were drafting the way that they did was because of where the team was at the time versus what they were trying to build for the future? And now that sort of has switched, will maybe the draft philosophy change a little?
I don't know. That's a fair question, because, teams usually start, they have an MO in how they, prepare for their drafting or how they view their drafting. I think sometimes when you draft much later in the first round, or if you don't have a first round pick like the Bruins haven't had for a while, and you're into the second round, you start saying, okay, it gives you a different look, right, Kyle? Like you're looking at it saying like, all right, well, who wouldn't want to find a Patrice Bergeron every second round? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But it's always, the beauty of the draft, the beauty and the beast of the draft is you have hindsight is completely 2020 all the time. Oh, well, this guy was taken and he should have been taken by you. That's, we've got that wonderful job of we're not in the draft room, so we have the outside looking in. It seems a lot easier, but there could be one guy fighting for that guy and 8 other guys battling for this guy. They take that guy that 8 guys all wanted. Turns out the other guy was right. So, but they got to go with what you think is right. Higgs, I don't know I think they'll change their philosophy. Yeah. Especially if they're in the top 8 or so of the draft. I mean,
makes it a little obvious.
You're going to get a different player in theory. Boy, you hope so. They can't, they have to hit. This is such an obvious comment. They have to hit on more of their high-end draft picks. They have to coming up. They have to.
Yeah. Yeah, just one example of that was Buffalo. I think for a decade, I think longer. I think it's going on year 14 now that they haven't seen the playoffs. But I think in the last 10 years, I think they've traded away 7/10 of their high-end picks. So it's
think about their 2 best players there. Besides Dahlin, okay, forwards.
Tage and Peterka, maybe?
I would say Tage and Tuck.
No, Alex Tuck.
It's fair. No, it's fair. Alex
and
Tuck,
they were both, how were they both required? Via trade. They weren't drafts. So, I mean, they still, what a mess there, though. What a mess.
Yeah, I know. Buffalo. And it almost feels no closer to, honestly, I kind of feel the same way about Detroit a little bit, too.
Yeah,
like Detroit, I was excited for Detroit, and it's just like they're almost like starting to lose traction again.
Well, they are, because we knew that one team in the playoff race, at least one, if not 2, late in the year. People talk about meaningful games in March. We're just entering March. This is when it really gets hard. And while Detroit was elevated under Todd McClellan, the new coaching staff, and they were doing a lot of good things, this is where the real hard time comes in. And now they're still seeing how they're far away. And Detroit, Steve Yzerman doesn't seem like he's ready to pull the trigger on that big deal for this team yet. This has been 6 years now that he's been there. So they're going to absolutely do some stuff in the offseason because they have to now take that next step. But Buffalo, again, oh my God. Yeah.
They just need new ownership. You should. We have a Pucking Around podcast that we're also a part of here, and we say it all the time that they just need new everything. So which stinks for a town like Buffalo. That's a big
NHL needs them to be good.
Yeah. All right. I just got 2 graphics just to show the ins and the outs for Boston. Here we have the outs. We lost Trent Frederick, Brazeau, Coyle, Marchand, Carlo, McLaughlin. A 2025 4th-round pick that was Edmonton's, a 2026 5th. We've retained 50% of Freddie's that ends this year, and we are retaining 50% of Carlo's for the remainder of his contract through 2026, 2027. The ins, quite a lot. Max, I'm going to butcher these names, and it's going to be bad.
Warner.
I
think it's Warner.
There we go.
Warner.
I'm going to need
Warner.
Maximus Warner.
If
it's Wayner, then I've never seen. I saw WAH like pronounced like it, but anyways,
Billy, I am historically known for butchering names. Just wait till we get the.
Well, so Warner's going to be tough. Is it Kustadinov? That one's going to get me for years.
Nusnadinov, I believe Nusnadinov. No, obviously no kid. Marat and Nusty. I don't. Nusnadinov, I believe, is it. Yes. Anyways, looking forward to meeting him.
Yeah, apparently he's got some really good. Was it him or was it who was the gentleman that was playing Providence? I believe it was the night before. Was it Nusnadinov?
Fraser Minton. It was Minton,
okay.
But he couldn't play there because he doesn't have his work visa because of the he's employed by a Canadian franchise. So hopefully he can get his, so he can come play in the States. He can go. He can still. He can. He. I don't know the terminology I'm looking for. He just needs the work visa stuff figured out. So,
Right.
and I would imagine that they would call him up as soon as they do. They'd say, "Hey, come play, 15 games up here," like he played 15 games earlier for Toronto.
Yeah, see what you got out of him. Yeah, that's a good one. Apparently, that was Toronto's best prospect. So that was
Him and
a good
Easton
one.
Cowan. There was another kid. It was those two players. So they got one of their two top prospects.
Good steal. Good steal. Will Zellers, who is a prospect for Colorado, who apparently is very talented. Henry Yokiyaru, Daniil Mishu, I believe is his name. Casey Middlestat, and a whole bunch of
picks.
whole mess of picks. However, it is important to note that the first round pick from Toronto is top 5 protected. There's no way they become a bottom 5 team next year. I don't think I just don't see it. So
I'd be impressed if that managed to kick in.
But we'd see. All right, fellas, let's just transition real quick to the 7th player award, and then we'll wrap it up. The voting had started, and I believe right now it's Morgan Geekie, Mark Kostelic, Eunice Corpusalo, Mason Lohrei, and Andrew Peak. Who do you guys have, Billy? Do you have a strong preference to one of those gentlemen, or do you think it's a pretty tight race between all of them?
I don't think it's a tight race between all of them. I would have to say, I think it's Morgan Geekie. I know he had 18 goals last year, whatever it was, but I think he's elevated even more. I do think that Lohrei and Korpisalo could be very much considered, but I don't know. I mean, Korpisalo, I love the guy. He's played. He's done his job pretty damn well, right? But I don't know if it's enough games when it's all said and done. And then Lohrei has been. You ride the roller coaster, which is normal. I mean, he just played 100 games in the NHL. You got to give him 250 plus. Denny Pottman, when I was with the Islanders organization, always would say minimum. You got to get 250 up to 300 games. You're talking 3-4 years. That's what basically it comes down to for NHL defensemen to get really established. And I've loved Lohrei at times, but there's also been woe at times, right? That's part of it. That's part of it. Just part of it. So I think it's Morgan Geekie. That's me.
Cool. Kyle and Vogel fight over it.
I thought the same thing. I thought it would be Geekie, but again, close second would be Lohrei. I mean, we'll see how the voting goes, but I think Geekie would be the top guy for me on that.
I think if it was December 9th and we were talking about this, it'd be a lot easier to make the argument for Kostelic. I think he had an awesome start to the year, and I think he kind of brought some attitude that we didn't have. But obviously, recency bias plays in, and goals kind of factor in a little more. Geekie's been basically the only person that can click with Pasta consistently outside of Zacha, who I think is my favorite player, who just seems like so snake bitten at all times. So it's like seeing Geekie fill that role has been nice to have somebody finally kind of hitch their wagon onto Pasta. Lohrei, I think if you had more time, not that you'd want more time where every other good defenseman's out of the lineup, if he had more time to sort of flourish like he has over the past few, then you'd see that kind of stock go up. But yeah, I think Geekie right now is the answer as well.
Yeah, I think Geekie is going to get it. I think right now he's running away with it. Lohrei would be a close second, but also agree with Higgy. I think you look back at if it was December 9th, you look at Mark Kostelic, and that entire fourth line for a little while was just an absolute wagon to watch. But unfortunately, they cooled off, much like a majority of the team. But it's hard to imagine Geekie not getting the 7th player award. Cool, guys. That is I believe that is a sweep. So that's awesome. There we go. I'm not gonna play the full horn. It's Morgan Geekie. All right, everybody. That is actually gonna do it. Vogel, why don't you take us out?
Just want to give another special thanks to Billy Jaffe. Thanks again for coming on. You're our first recurring guest. Just like last time, we want to make it just to say thank you. Want to make a donation to the Greater Boston Food Bank.
Very, very, very nice, you guys. It's unnecessary, but very nice. I think we should redo the open right now before we
but yeah. Anyway, just wanted to say thanks.
Three
you're
things
welcome.
I'm
You're
never
welcome
going
on
to hear
any
the
time.
end of this week. Winnipeg, the Open, and I don't. Maybe it's something.
We can throw Wallstrom. We can drag Wallstrom back out if you want.
I guess.
Billy Cam has decided he's the only person that was ever going to bang the Oliver Wallstrom drum.
Okay.
And we actually had to issue a formal apology that his views did not reflect that of the
I
rest
never
of the team.
said Wallstrom was going to come in and be the needle mover that this team needed, but he's still young in RFA, and I say you should not let your RFAs walk for free. That's all I'm saying. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Fine, that's my third
pull up
thing.
the receipts, but no.
That's my third thing. Fine, give me Winnipeg and whatever the other one, the Cold Open and Wallstrom.
Listen,
I'll take it.
I've been to Winnipeg a handful of times, and it's fun because good hockey market, and again, I don't want to bet. I just don't. It's just so different than it's just so different. So I love my buddies who's up there who running the place, and I do want them actually to do well. So I think they have a good team. I hope they do very well. It's just you should go there you should go experience it in May, the playoffs. It would be a ton of fun. I'm being serious, actually, too. Go there for a couple of days. You can see it.
That's right, Kyle. Yeah, you hear this?
So, yeah, UMass Lowell's finest, Connor Hellebuck back.
He is, well, boy, he needs a playoff,
awesome.
too, right?
Fellow Riverhawk.
Yeah,
that guy's running away.
We got lucky. It was my freshman year was the year that he won.
Well, he's under. I know the whole team's under pressure, and fair or not fair, he's under pressure for the playoff. I mean, he just is. That's what comes with the position of goaltending. So, good to be on with you guys. Happy to be your first repeat. I think maybe you guys should try to elevate your repeat guests next time. But I'm glad we could connect. Sunday mornings are good, especially with coffee. Better with coffee. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Billy.
Thanks a lot, Billy.